Well, hey everybody, Mike Griffith here. Welcome to tonight's Friday Night Mike. And I was all set up and ready to go on the front porch, and then this torrential rainstorm just kind of happened. So here we are inside the house with a little echo effect. I hope that's not too irritating or distracting as I talk. I don't have the earbuds on. I'm kind of going without the earbuds, so audio may be a little bit different tonight than what we're accustomed to. Man, it was a long week. I was just sitting here, and I'd actually planned on starting at 8:30, and I thought, well, let me go back through and kind of see what happened during the week. I want to make sure I touch on everything that happened during the week so that everybody can kind of get a clear idea where Georgia's at right now, where the SEC's at right now, what the news is, because there's been a lot. SEC started practice this week. The schedules came out on Monday. I guess my general takeaway is that there's a lot of momentum right now. If there's a positive, it's gone from, when Greg Sankey was talking, like the SEC commissioner was talking a few weeks ago, he was saying, he looks at it like he's trying to run out of ground ball. And I just thought to myself, man, that's not the best comparison I'm looking for. That doesn't sound real positive to me. Looking to run out of ground ball, it's like, well, I guess I've got to try. And it almost seemed like a fruitless task. Like they were basically saying, hey, we know this probably isn't going to happen, but we owe it to everybody to try. And I was like, well, could you compare it to maybe running under a fly ball, something with a positive outcome? Because usually when you're running out of ground ball, you're kind of thinking, well, I'm going to be out anyway, but I need to hustle. But I think what's happened is because of the way the Big Ten and the Pac-12 kind of fumbled it, and you see this huge outcry and backlash from the parents and the players. It's like the SEC and the ACC and the Big 12 are looking at each other like, oh my gosh, we don't want to be them, because those people are ticked. They went to the Big Ten headquarters in Chicago or in Rosemont or wherever you want to call that suburb. I've been there a couple times for some spring meetings. And they've written letters and they petitioned and they've, just gone, we saw Justin Fields on Good Morning America, and like everybody is just furious about this. And the SEC and the Big 12 and the ACC are kind of looking at each other like, you know what? Maybe we're on the right side of this from a public perception standpoint. And it was hard to know going in. I mean, how would the public feel? And you don't want to think that optics have anything to do with the decision. You want to think that this is a decision you make free and clear. And I do think the SEC will, continue to consult with their doctors and their medical team. They have a task force they put together. I thought the SEC kind of showed the way as far as how well they've handled this in stages and increments. The way Greg Sankey has stayed in touch with all the presidents. So the SEC doesn't have this embarrassing deal going on right now like the Big Ten does, or like the Pac-12. The Pac-12 just kind of faded away. People on the West Coast, do they really? I don't know. I don't want to say they don't care about football, but it kind of gets lost out there. That's why a lot of those California kids end up in the SEC. They want to be somewhere where it matters, where it's front and center, where everybody's got it at the forefront of their mind. So very interesting week to me. And again, the momentum is probably my biggest takeaway, is that the SEC's got that momentum. So I guess I'll start tonight's show, talk about the attendance model, right? So all the schools are coming out with their attendance models. The SEC kicks off September 26th. I think there's some games. I want to say South Alabama plays somebody the first week of the season, and I don't have that in front of me. But like the major conferences all play like September 12th. So the SEC, of course, doesn't start till September 26th. And all these different schools, it sounds like most of them have attendance policies between 20 and 25% of capacity, because they're all going to do the social distancing, right? That's going to be very important to maintain those 6 feet between people. And wearing masks when you go in the stadium. Everybody's going to have to wear a mask. And if you don't have one or you forget one, George will be able to hand it out at the gate. To get in the parking garage, yeah, you got to have your pass, but everybody's got to have a ticket too. That's the first clue that there's probably not going to be tailgating, at least not on campus. But I've talked to a lot of Georgia fans, and they've kind of said, well, we're going to tailgate in the neighborhood. We're going to tailgate with our friends. We're going to find a different way to do it, a different way to celebrate football that may not necessarily be on campus. So I think Georgia fans, I think most SEC fans will find a way to work around that no tailgating on campus deal. I think I heard Florida State is going on campus. I know Greg McGarity said at the first game at Arkansas that there won't be any tailgating. But that doesn't matter to Georgia fans anyway, because there's not going to be any visiting tickets sold. I'm sure there'll be some resourceful Georgia fans that'll find their way there. Certainly the parents. Now the parents are going to be able to get tickets. The Georgia players' parents are going to be able to get tickets to Arkansas. But as far as Georgia fans, no. Right now, the only road game you can get tickets for is Jacksonville, and that's really not a road game. That's considered a neutral site game. We can talk about that a little bit more later. Probably no dog walk. A lot of the teams do the team walks, and, let's face it, it's just not, when you think about teams marching down to the stadium and people on both sides like yelling and cheering, I mean, that doesn't work, right? Now, maybe if you had like a tunnel, like a plastic tunnel, but it's just not going to happen. So there's probably not, we knew this was coming. And this is not a surprise. Most people have kind of thought, yeah, we knew this was coming. Did think it was interesting that McGarity said that they're looking at different ways to pipe in fan noise, right? Noise. Kirby Smart had mentioned a week ago that when they go to Alabama, he's sure they'll have the speakers on and there'll be some kind of music or some kind of distraction. And right now that's kind of being discussed in the SEC is how do you create somewhat of an environment. I haven't watched a lot of NBA, but I did see, how they're, putting the pictures up of people and the video board. And then, of course, you see at the baseball games, they've got the cardboard cutouts and the giant stuffed animals. So it's going to look different, right? Only having 25,000 or 23,000 or 20,000 in these 100,000 seat stadiums, it's going to be a little different. But I think people are just happy to have football. That's why I dug out my Tigers hat tonight. Just kind of thinking about my friends in Michigan. I just can't even imagine, just how dark it must feel up there right now without football. And I feel bad. I feel bad for them. I grew up in Michigan, and it's a big football state. It really is. You got U of M and Michigan State, and you got the directionals, the Eastern Michigan, the Central Michigan, the Western Michigan. And there's not going to be any college football. And that, that hurts. So thinking about them, I thought, okay, I'll put on my Tigers hat tonight. To give a shout out to all the folks in Michigan that don't have football. They'll have to adopt some teams down south. I know a lot of my friends follow Georgia now. They like to read about the Bulldogs. It's an interesting program. What Kirby Smart's doing is they all know Nick Saban, of course, because Nick Saban coached at Michigan State back in the day. Never won a bowl game there, believe it or not. But he coached there. So that was pretty interesting. So yeah. Still catching my breath from my walk. Went on a walk before that storm hit. It's so hot and humid and sticky. You're just like, just yuck, right? August. Georgia, August. Not fun. Speaking of Georgia weather, man, this schedule is not fun for people that don't like super hot or cool weather. The way this schedule broke down, I'm going to talk about it weather-wise, okay? Because September 26th, you're at Arkansas. Okay, that's a layup. It's an easy game. And then you have 2 home games, October 3rd and October 10th. I hope it's mild. I hope we got like some 80s and 70s. I know it seems like I've been here and it's still pretty hot at the beginning of October, but I think it'll be okay. But then between October 10th and November 21st, Georgia's not home. Georgia's on the road, and I'm thinking man, 3rd week of October, 4th week of October, 1st week in November. I mean, that's when the weather at Athens is just awesome. So kind of man, kind of a bummer there. And then I think it was a tough draw anyway. And I went on the Paul Feinbaum show, and I love doing the show. It's a lot of fun. I like talking with Paul. I've known Paul since the 1990s. We were both in Alabama at the same time. I know he's gonna take me for a ride, right? I know he's gonna ask tough questions, but the thing I hate is they'll take one quote. I'll go on there for 10 or 15 minutes, and he asked me about the Jacksonville game. Well, listen, I'm honestly tired of talking about the Jacksonville game. You all know how I feel about it. You all know how Kirby Smart feels about it. You know how Mark Richt felt about it. You know how Jim Donnan felt about it. There's fans that love it, and then there's reasons that it's a disadvantage. But I'm just tired of talking about it. But anyway, he asked me And I said, yeah, I think it's a blind spot for the administration. I don't think they really understand how much they're giving up. And that's like the one quote out of the whole show that I do. And, all the Georgia fans are like, could you stop bringing it up? I'm like, hey, man, I didn't bring it up. He asked the question. And if somebody asks you a question, I'm going to answer it, right? I mean, that's what I go on there for. So they found it interesting. I know I talked to a buddy of mine at Ole Miss today. He said he doesn't really understand it. I said, look, it is what it is. But this year, the relevance of it is it's a COVID-19 year. And there's probably not going to be tailgating. And it obviously to some people, wouldn't seem to make as much sense to fly down there if there's not going to be a lot of fans, right? I think 9,000 tickets are going to be available to Georgia and 9,000 to Florida, right? But the bigger deal to me is where it falls November 7th. I mean, Georgia's not going to have a home game between October 10th and November 21st. To me, that's the tough part, is the kids don't have that routine of a home game in there. They're just road. So you know the schedule, right? I see if I can remember. I see if I've got it memorized yet, okay? So you start out at Arkansas September 26th. You come back and play Auburn the 3rd, Tennessee the 10th, Alabama the 17th, Kentucky the 24th. You've got a bye week on Halloween. Then you go to Florida on the 7th. And then is it at Missouri on the 14th? I think so. And then home to Mississippi State on the 21st. And home to South Carolina on the 21st. Home to Mississippi State on the 28th. And then home to Vanderbilt. I mean, at the end of that schedule, you're just like, that's why I think it's tough. It's front loaded. And I would have, if I was trying to design the schedule for Georgia, I would have backloaded it for a couple of reasons. One, you want to give this offense a chance to kind of, get in sync and get their timing down. Two, more importantly, Georgia's so deep, man. When other teams are wearing down in November, Georgia's powering up. Those young guys are starting to rise to the forefront, and guys are fighting for positions, and you've got the veterans trying to hold on, and now the young guys can play more snaps, and now Georgia's a deeper, better team, whereas other teams are kind of wearing down. When they get to player 2 and player 3 on the depth chart, they're not as effective. So, but now, I mean, Georgia's going to blow everybody out of the water in the month of November. You just got to hope that after the Florida game, that Georgia's in the driver's seat. And if they're in the driver's seat, then, you'll glide right into the SEC championship game. So it's going to be very important. There's a huge sense of urgency for Georgia, though. Huge sense of urgency. And a really physical 4-game stretch. I said the most physical 4-game stretch in the league. Auburn, Tennessee, Alabama, Kentucky. And, I'm starting to give Kentucky props. Kentucky offensive line is considered one of the better lines. Kentucky's a tough team. Remember the game last year? Wasn't it 0-0 at halftime? So that's a physical road game. Alabama will obviously be a physical game. Tennessee, a chippy game. Jeremy Pruitt can scheme you up. And Auburn, of course, it's never an easy game. So, you go from Auburn's Kevin Steele to Tennessee's Jeremy Pruitt. Let me tell you, those are two of the best defensive coaches in the country. And then Nick Saban's sitting back watching, okay, how are these guys going to defend Georgia? So I don't like that lead in. That makes me, I said, in the offseason, I was really bullish that Georgia would beat Alabama if the game was at the start of the season. But I'm starting to flip. I'm starting to wonder a little bit. I'm not convinced that Alabama is going to be the dominator that they've been. Just so you know, I give LSU a puncher's chance of winning the West. I just can't. Kellen Mond is a guy. I know a lot of people talk about Texas A&M, but I just can't get into Texas A&M. I watched him last year, and they gave a game effort against Georgia. I didn't think Georgia played particularly well, and Georgia still won that game. Even though I didn't think, Jake played real well, and they were still able to win that game. So A&M's not a team that I could really see winning it. Auburn, I've got some questions about their line play. As I look, teams can grow, right? I mean, I think teams can grow, but I have some questions, I guess is the best way to put it, about Auburn and about Texas A&M. So I kind of see it as LSU or Alabama. And I think that game's in Baton Rouge this year when they play. So that's going to be kind of interesting. But just looking at the schedule, there's one other note that I'll tell you. And I know, once again, that these road games aren't going to have a lot of fans there. But listen, part of the difficulty of being on the road is just to travel. And everybody, oh, it's just the same. Well, look, you gotta go to the facility. You got to get on a bus, and then you got to take the bus to the airport. And then, by the time everybody gets on and everybody gets off, and you're carrying your bags, and you're on the airplane, and you're flying, and you get a little dehydrated. I was talking to one of the Georgia player parents. I think he's probably in here watching. I'm not going to throw out any names, but he was a college athlete, and we were talking about this, and he said, you're right. He said it is a disadvantage because he was an athlete. He said, you get dehydrated. You got to warm up a little bit more. It's just a little bit more on you when you travel. Does it make a difference? Well, I mean, the odds makers will tell you it does, and not necessarily just because of the crowd. Part of it is the travel. Part of it's not sleeping in your own bed at night. So, I think those road games, that stretch between October 10th and November 21st when Georgia's not at home, I think that's dangerous. I think that's really dangerous. So there was a new rule passed today, the NCAA Board of Governors. This is where it gets really murky and really gummy. And, here Kirby and his staff have worked to kind of, get these classes balanced with certain guys leaving and certain guys coming in, and you want just enough guys in each class. And now all of a sudden you've got this new rule from the NCAA Board of Governors. So two things are going to happen. Usually it's 5 years to play 4 seasons, right? Well, now it's actually 6 to play 5 because everybody gets a free year of eligibility. Everybody gets a free year of eligibility. Doesn't matter whether you play this fall, doesn't matter whether you play this spring. Nobody's year is going to count. So there's an extra year of eligibility. And you say, well, how does that affect the 85 scholarship limit? Well, good question. So what they said is that the players whose eligibility expires this year, the seniors, so they're going to be able to stay another year and not count against the 85. So you can keep, but here's the thing. How good is a senior that sticks around for a 5th year? Are they NFL players? Not many. So when you look at Georgia's roster, it doesn't really help Georgia out that much. I mean, I look at it and I said, maybe Nate McBride and Walter Grant, a couple of guys, backup linebackers. You say that, but Georgia keeps recruiting these great linebackers. So I guess if they wanted to stick around, they could. Maybe I'm underestimating them. Maybe they'll go free agent and make teams as, or maybe one of them will have a breakout year. But I think the other rule actually has a bigger effect on Georgia, that they're giving everybody a free year. Because now maybe if you're a backup, maybe you think, well, maybe I need to transfer out. Because now instead of having 2 years left or 3 years left, I actually have 3 years left or 4 years left if I get out now. And we know if you're in conference, you got to sit out a year. And we'll talk more about that later. I know everybody's probably waiting to talk about the whole Cade Mays drama. That story is just absolutely blown up. But I think some guys, maybe some of the reserve defensive backs, I guess I'll throw Robert Beal out there only because he was in the transfer portal earlier in the spring. I mean, Robert's in a tough spot. He's a good ball player, right? Robert Beal is a good football player, but he's behind some future NFL starters, not just NFL players, but Jermaine Johnson and Azeez Ojulari. I mean, these guys are going to be starting on Sunday real quick, probably next season, right? Adam Anderson, right? Adam Anderson, a great pass rush guy, kind of a pass rush specialist. So if you're Beal, you're looking at and Nolan Smith, the number 1 recruit, you're Beal, you're going, man, I might be 2-3 years out from starting at Georgia. Maybe I need to go somewhere else. But the question is, where do you go, right? Where do you go? So, because if you go in conference, you got to sit out a year. Do you really want to go to the Big 12? Do you really want to go to the ACC? Georgia's already had 3 guys transfer. Devad Wilson is down there at Central Florida. We know that Devad wanted to be closer to home. That was very legit for Devad, very legit family reason. We know Otis Reese went to Ole Miss. Otis, a guy that was buried on the depth chart, very good football player, but it was pretty clear Lewis Seen had won that spot, and so he wants to go to Ole Miss. And good for, no one holds that against Otis. And then of course Cade Mays going to Tennessee, and that's the thing. That thing's gotten kind of ugly. Before we get to talking about the drama of the week, and again, some of the reserve defensive backs, Poole, Brainy, Speed, guys that are very good football players, but don't get the snaps just because there's so much talent ahead of them. And you just wonder, do you see those names pop up? Trey Blount at receiver. Do you see those names pop up in the transfer portal here in the next few days or week now that this new rules come into effect? Some other stuff today. Dan Lanning recently extended for another year. Congratulations to Dan Lanning. Another, $1.25 million, which is a lot of money. A lot of, especially nowadays when you're seeing all these other programs canceling sports, and yet Georgia is able to continue their $81 million football building, and they're able to continue to, pay a guy like Dan Lanning over $1 million to be a coordinator and pay Kirby Smart $7 million because they don't have to cancel out programs. You look at Iowa today, they gave up, men's and women's swimming today, and another sport, I can't remember. And these sports are gone. Some of these other programs that are paying coaches $4 and $5 million and giving coaches $500,000 bonuses, hey, that $500,000 bonus could have paid for your men's and women's swimming team this year. Are we getting there? Are we getting there where coaches' salaries now are going to have to be more heavily scrutinized? Because I understand there's a great value to these coaches, and you're worth what they pay you. You bring in a lot of money and a lot of revenue with championships. But I don't think anybody wants to see these programs canceled. I don't think anybody wants to see college athletics turn into college football and not much else. I think part of the amateurism and what we like about college is that there are other sports, and maybe football is far and away number one for you, but there's probably a number two. Some people say men's basketball, some people say women's basketball, some people say softball, some people say baseball, some people follow tennis. Georgia's got a tennis tradition, equestrian. You like the idea that there's other student athletes on campus that are getting this great experience and that football's funding it. But now that we're in a pinch, football's just funding football. And so other schools are having to cut these programs. Georgia, because of the conservative nature that they've operated with, Georgia's got that $100 million reserve fund. They're going to be able to get through this without cutting programs, but keep an eye on other programs in the SEC. You're going to see some cost-cutting measures across the SEC. So far, so good for Georgia, but you're going to see some other programs really suffer. So back to Dan Lanning. He spoke a little bit on each of the freshman defenders. I know people that watch the show love to hear about the new players that you haven't seen yet. MJ Sherman, boy, what a good-looking linebacker he is. Dan's comment on him, he'll be a real asset moving forward. Okay, that kind of sounds like he has a good personality. So probably not going to start, maybe not going to see the field start of the year. Real asset moving forward, Jalen Carter. Now, Dan lit up when we talked about Jalen Carter, the big defensive lineman from Florida. We definitely think he can make an impact for us. And if his technique gets better day in and day out, he definitely makes the guy on the other side of the ball better. Huge compliment for Jalen Carter. You will see Jalen Carter on the field this year. So we know about Jordan Davis at nose tackle. We know that Julian Rochester is back for a fifth year at defensive tackle. We know Devontae Wyatt is a pretty sweet defensive tackle. He was second on the team in pressures, right? Throw Jalen Carter into the mix as another great Georgia defensive lineman. And this defensive line is going to be the key to a national championship season. If Georgia wins the national championship, the key will be the defensive line. The key will be able to get pressure without blitzing. If Georgia can do that, because look, that's what Alabama and Clemson did, right? Very effectively those years. And to me, that's kind of what Georgia's been missing. Georgia's had some very good defensive linemen, but I don't think they've had a unit this deep and this thick. I see that Terrence Mathis has joined us. Mr. Mathis, in a few minutes, you're going to want to close your ears because I'm going to go after the offense a little bit and scare you. I know Ron's not scared. I know those quarterbacks aren't scared. But Warren Brinson, another young defensive tackle. Dan Lanning said the thing I was looking for from him is effort. That says red shirt to me, and that he's got a ways to go. Now, offensively, earlier this week, the Georgia players do a really good job of not really saying anything, right? They're coached up. We said, what do you think about the quarterbacks? Oh, they're all good. All the quarterbacks look good. All the quarterback leaders. We just go out there and, nobody's going to tell you which quarterback's doing better than the other one. No one's going to tell you specifically about the offensive scheme, what they're doing differently. But Kearis Jackson did bring some enthusiasm to the conversation this week when he said they're playing fast and everybody's in the right spots. That should be music to the ears of Georgia fans, because listen, this new offense, this is a brand new offense. This is brand new terminology. This is new route trees for the running backs. This is a new offensive coordinator. 3 new quarterbacks, 4 new quarterbacks, 5 scholarship quarterbacks in the room. There's a lot going on there. So I think that's pretty interesting that you've got all those quarterbacks in that one room and a new offensive coordinator and a new offense. I mean, that's a lot. That's a lot to get right. And I'm glad that they're saying that everybody is doing what they're supposed to be doing right now, because when they start hitting, holy cow, good luck. That's when we're going to find out more. I think we're going to find out a lot more about this offense when the pads go on. Now, they've had their 4 lead-up practices, so the next practice, whenever that is practice 5, and there's going to be some hitting, all right? And then before long, there's going to be a scrimmage, and that's where they're really going to sort things out. So here's my questions. How much can they really do? How much can you do under fire? I know you can do it in shorts and helmets, or underwear Olympics. I know you can do that. I know you can do it in skeleton. Everybody looks good, right? Everybody's got a plan until you get hit in the mouth. What's going to happen when these guys get hit in the mouth? Now, Georgia doesn't hit the quarterbacks. So be clear on that. They're not going to sack the quarterbacks. Funny story about Dwan, though. I probably shouldn't tell it, but Dwan wanted to lower his head into people even before he was. So Dwan Mathis is like ready to roll. So the people are like, oh, poor Dwan Mathis. Okay, just forget the poor Dwan stuff. Don't feel bad. Don't feel sorry for him anymore. This dude is not need anybody to feel sorry for him. Dwan Mathis is ready to play. Hey, Jamie Newman is ready to play. You saw Jamie. Looks like he's been out at Venice Beach, lifting weights on the beach or something. My gosh, this guy's biceps are unbelievable. And JT Daniels, I saw a highlight of him the other day. He just throws his frozen rope across the middle of the lanterns, and I'm like, man, Daniels, stronger arm than Jake Fromm, And then Carson Beck is just such a young guy. And I think most of you probably saw that picture of Carson next to Newman. It's 18 versus 23. But the fact that Beck is able to make these plays and compete as the true freshman coming in, I'm impressed. And he hasn't backed out. It would have been really easy for Carson Beck to take his ball and go home when JT Daniels transferred in. And he stuck it out. I knew Mathis was going to stick it out because of how much he's got invested. And you knew Jamie Newman was going to have the lead. Because he was a Wake Forest grad transfer. But Beck, I give Beck some credit. He's a young guy, and he stuck it out. But how much can they do with this offense? That's what we have to find out. I've got some other questions. I got some questions. At running back. If you're going to go single back in an air raid, is that Zamir White back there? Can Zamir White catch the ball out of the backfield? I know he can pick up blitzes, and I know Zamir can run downhill. But is Zamir the guy that's going to catch the ball in the flats? Is Zamir a good route runner? I did see him catch a wheel route one time in a scrimmage. So it's not like he's got stone hands, but is he the best guy for that? Could it be James Cook? Or where will James Cook line up? Last year they used James Cook in the slot a lot. Or remember, they would always use James Cook in motion, and we'd always wonder why they never gave the ball to him or why they never threw it to him in the flats. I think you're going to see more of that this year with James Cook. I think James Cook is a name you're going to hear a lot because of his ability in the open field. I think one thing that Kirby Smart was disappointed with was that last year's offense didn't really get the ball to James Cook a lot. Now, I don't know how much of it was the way James practiced or Jake's reads downfield or the James Coley, progression tree. I don't know enough about it to comment, but it did seem like Kirby Smart was disappointed with that. Kirby also said that other teams took James Cook away. So it's going to be interesting to see if they can get James Cook more involved this year. I think he's dynamic. I think he's explosive. He's a guy I've been high on for 3 years. Trey McKitty. I'm hearing great things about Trey McKitty. For a 247-pounder, they're telling me this guy can really run. Trey McKitty could be a game changer. If Trey McKitty is that matchup guy, and listen, I thought Eli Wolf and Charlie Werner did an adequate job last year. They did very good blocking. You can go back and watch. They were key. Eli Wolf had the huge catch against Florida, helped him wrap that up. Thought that was very important. This is going to be interesting to find out just how much of a matchup issue Trey McKitty can cause from that tight end position. So Looking forward to seeing what Trey does there. And if Trey does create the matchup, what does that do to the players around you? What's the personnel like? I mean, these are the things that Georgia has to find out early on in this fall camp, probably in the next couple weeks, right? The next couple scrimmages. They've got to sort it out and say, okay, who are our playmakers? Who do we need to have on the field? What are the four guys? Is it four wides and no tight end? Is it two tight ends? Is Darnell Washington going to come in and do some special stuff? A lot of people talk about this freshman from Vegas, the 6'7", 280, whatever, this monstrous 5-star guy. So what about John Fitzmagic, right? He's a guy that Kirby sent out, talked to the media a dozen times last year. Obviously thinks a lot about him. What's that package going to look like? Some of it will be predicated on what the defense does. Some of it will be predicated on what matchups you like. But a lot of it's going to be, what does Georgia do best? And then you build off of that base. What do they do best? What are they comfortable doing? So those are kind of some of my questions about the offense, questions about the defense. And now the Cade Mays transfer. So I couldn't believe it, the way this story exploded yesterday. We keep up with metrics to find out what everybody's reading. We want to serve our audience. And so we say, okay, well, people like to read this and they like to read that. The Cade Mays story was the biggest page view story of the summer so far. I'm trying to think. Nothing has surpassed it. I mean, it is just, I guess because of the drama involved, I mean, it is kind of unusual, right? The dad sits in a folding. So let me go way back. So I was actually covering Tennessee when Cade Mays was a commit. And I remember being in the football building when Cade Mays was there on a visit, and they had this huge recruiting weekend, and Cade Mays was the anchor of it. And he was, the whole concept, the whole theme was the best players in Tennessee are going to stay in Tennessee. And Cade Mays is telling all of them, you got to stay here, you got to stay at Tennessee, we're building something special. And Cade's telling everybody Tennessee's the future, blah, 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 blah. And I'm thinking, man, this is one big dude, right? I mean, you could see why he was a 5-star. He was huge. And the players gravitated, and you're going, wow, Tennessee's got all this momentum, right? And they go into the 2017 season with the #1 class in the SEC. But then they start losing bad. And Georgia just trucks them. I remember that week. Peyton Manning was in town. Tennessee's going to, checker the stadium. And I'm just going, you're playing Georgia this week. And I could tell this Georgia team in 2017, I remember talking to Brandon Adams about it then. I said, man, Brandon, this Georgia team's different, man. I'm telling you, these guys, this is the most physical, this Georgia team, and I'm thinking, Tennessee, do you really want to checker your stadium for Georgia? Do you really want to honor Peyton Manning against this Georgia team? And it was a bad idea. And Georgia won 41-0, and the drums really started beating on Butch Jones. And I think it was a week or two later, they lost at Alabama. And I found out that if Butch didn't win from Kentucky on, that he was going to be fired. Then they lost to Kentucky. You knew he was going to be fired at the end of the year. But when Cade decommitted, I talked to an administrator there, and they pulled the plug. They said, they can't even keep Butch through the season. You got to get rid of him now. Because now you just lost Cade Mays. Your recruiting's falling apart. That's why Butch Jones was fired with 2 games left in the 2017 season, because Cade Mays decommitted. And they wanted to get a coach in there that could pick up some recruiting momentum. So that was why that happened, though, was the Cade Mays decommitment. That essentially so Cade comes to Georgia. Well, apparently on this recruiting visit in December, the dad, Kevin Mays, who played at Tennessee under Philip Fulmer, sits in a folding chair and his right pinky gets cut off and goes shooting across the floor. Sam Pittman picks it up, puts it in ice. And I mean, I just can't even imagine the scene. Now, the Mays family, they're big guys, but can you imagine somebody sitting in a chair and the finger just gets slapped right off and shoots across the floor? I mean, what a gruesome, what an unbelievable image. The imagery of the blood coming out of your hand, a finger on the floor. It sounds like something out of a horror movie. What was that movie, Hostel? Something like that. And they were cutting bigger limbs off in that movie. If you haven't seen it and you like horror movies, it's a recommendation. If you don't like horror movies and you don't like gruesome stuff, don't watch Hostel. I only watched it because I was over there in Slovenia 10 years ago and I thought the scenery was cool. The Hostel movie was scary. Anyway, sidetrack. So anyway, he gets his finger. Cade still commits to Georgia. Cade still comes to Georgia. Cade starts 7 games as a freshman and earns freshman All-American honors. And how do I know that? Because I'm the chairman of the freshman All-American team. And Cade Mays is a dude, and he's on there. And Isaiah Wilson was on there too, remember? So Cade had a great freshman year. Andrew sprained that ankle at South Carolina. Cade had like this 40-something jersey on, 47, 43. He was going to be like a tight end for the jumbo, had to change jerseys and replace Andrew Thomas. And Cade's playing early. He was the first guy off the bench as a true freshman. So wow, congratulations to Cade Mays. He was ahead of Jamari Salyer, who was actually rated higher, right? So Cade came in, got his work done, was on the field, had a very good freshman season. So I wrote this long story about him. I got all these videos, and it's Cade, how do you like playing? He loves playing all the different positions. He says it really makes a difference. Well, in the meantime, Cade's younger brother, Cooper Mays, is another prospect, but he's not quite as big, and he's not quite as good in high school as Cade. Now, he's still a guy George is looking at, but gosh, you know, George is recruiting 1 or 2 in the country, and they've got these 5-star guys lined up. So maybe any other year Cooper Mays gets this committable offer, but Georgia just didn't have it. So Cooper Mays goes to Tennessee. And some people thought, well, that was kind of where the fallout started, that the Mays family really want, and of course you do. Of course you'd like to see your sons play football together. I don't have a problem with that. That makes sense. That's not being selfish. Any parent would want to. You know, you don't got to split up on the weekends. So maybe they're ticked off at Georgia that they didn't offer Cooper Mays. Well then, you know, Cade has a good sophomore year. He starts 11 games. I mean, he didn't earn all conference or anything, but, you know, he played every offensive line position, and he started at left tackle in the Sugar Bowl. I mean, this could be Cade Mays' job of the future, left tackle at Georgia. And but Isaiah went pro. Isaiah Wilson didn't go to the bowl game, went pro. That was Cade's best friend. Sam Pittman took the job as the Arkansas head coach. So now he lost your position coach. You lost your best friend Isaiah. Your brother Cooper isn't coming. And you've played every position at Georgia. And, you know, you've been a part of 2 SEC championship teams. So if Cade Mays wants to go back to Tennessee, back to his hometown, where there's a lot of pressure in Knoxville, and wants to play with his brother, I'm fine with that. I understand that as a parent. I understand that as a beat guy. Now, I also understand why, like, Georgia's not doing backflips about this. Because they're going, hey, we've invested a lot of time in you, Cade. We recruited you. We gave you a scholarship that somebody else would have gladly wanted. We gave you playing time that somebody else could have used if we would have known you were going to leave. Maybe we give Xavier Truss that starter. Maybe we give Warren McClendon more snaps. But we gave you everything you wanted, and you're still. So George is going to sit back and go, yeah, I mean, you know, that's not good. And Tennessee's a rival. So somebody suggested Kirby Smart was supposed to write a letter of recommendation or release. That's not going to happen. No, it's not his job to do that. Now, it's up to the NCAA and the SEC, because Cade's transferred in the conference. He's got to get a waiver from both the NCAA and the Southeastern Conference to be eligible to play right away, because that's a rule in the SEC. If you transfer in conference, you got to sit out a year. And we're seeing that with Otis Reese. He's not cleared at Ole Miss. And what's the name of the quarterback that went from Auburn to Kentucky? Joey, is it Joey Gatewood? Is that the right name? Yeah, Joey Gatewood. He's not cleared either. So it's not just Cade Mays, but the Tennessee fans are furious. They're calling Kirby all these names. They're talking about Georgia. Oh, you know, not releasing. You know, look, you're barking up the wrong tree. Jeremy Pruitt would never do this. Listen. You know, I covered Jeremy long enough. I knew him. I didn't know him as a player. I covered him Alabama when he was a player. I've covered him at Tennessee. Jeremy Pruitt would absolutely not feel good about a starting offensive lineman going to another SEC school playing right away. I mean, don't drink that orange Kool-Aid. Now, right now, Tennessee's in a position where they're taking more than they're given as far as transfers go, so they're going to have it. But I looked it up. I mean, Philip, you know, they've got this legislation out there for 1-year transfer, right? Their basketball coach, Rick Barnes, he's against it. He's come out publicly against it. The athletic director, Philip Fulmer, is against it. So Tennessee's kind of talking out of both sides of the mouth. I understand the frustration. I do. But nobody's going to change the rules for you. But if you're Tennessee right now, you're probably ticked off about the schedule. You feel like you got a bad draw on the schedule. And now you look, and Georgia's got JT Daniels, the quarterback from USC, and he's eligible. Well, look, that's a different case. Number one, it's an out-of-conference transfer. Number two, JT Daniels didn't even play a full half of football. He got injured in the second quarter of the opening game. I mean, the guy pretty much missed an entire season. So it's apples and oranges. And yet still, I know this is part of what drives football is the passion. But boy, if you go on my Twitter timeline, at MikeGriffith32, you will see some unbelievable comments towards me and towards Georgia and towards Kirby Smart. Opening lines for the games came out this week. And I'm going to give you my picks. It's early. Jump on them now, right? Alabama minus 21.5 at Missouri. You know, Missouri's got a new coach. They kind of got a new quarterback. The whole Kelly Bryant thing didn't work out too well last year. You know, Missouri can be a spoiler, but Alabama, man, those quarterbacks are competing for the job. I think I would take Alabama and give 21.5 points on the road. I know Columbia, Missouri can be tough. You remember Georgia's had a tough game there a few years back. Florida minus 10.5 at Ole Miss. Lane Kiffin gets a lot of credit. He's good on Twitter. He's really good on Twitter. And, he called plays at Alabama and they won games when they had a lot of talent. I want to see how good of a coach Lane Kiffin is, right? I don't think you're going to see it in the first game. Picking all these road favorites is dangerous in the SEC, but I'm going to take Florida and give 10.5 points at Ole Miss. Now, this is kind of my surprise game, okay? Kentucky is at Auburn. Auburn is a 7.5 point favorite. I like Auburn to win that game, but I think Kentucky's going to keep it close. So I'm going to take Kentucky and 7.5 points just because I think Kentucky's a physical team. At the start of the year, they're more dangerous. They're fresh. They've got their quarterback back. Their offense can be a little bit more balanced. I'm not going to say anything too wild and crazy about Eddie Gran. But Auburn's got some holes to fill. I like Bo Nix a lot as a quarterback. I think they're going to be dangerous for Georgia. But in the opener at home against Kentucky, I think that this is a game that Auburn could overlook. LSU's at home, minus 17.5 against Mississippi State. I think they'll beat Mississippi State by 35. I don't think this game will be close. I think LSU will dominate Mississippi State. I think Mike Leach was a bad hire. I don't believe he's going to get it done at Mississippi State, and I think they're going to find out right out of the gate just how bad of a hire this was, and I expect LSU to win that game. Tennessee minus 3 at South Carolina. Man, this is a pick'em game to me because Will Muschamp, and so we know South Carolina can be game, especially early in the year, right? Tennessee has, who's their receivers? I got questions, right? And their interior defensive line. You know what? I'm going to take South Carolina and an upset at home over Tennessee. And I don't know how much of an upset it really is. I think the line is this way because Tennessee's won 6, and everybody remembers that, and they remember how South Carolina finished bad, and therefore I think the odds makers know what they're doing, and a lot of people are going to take Tennessee and give those points. I think South Carolina's going to win that game. Texas A&M minus 29.5 against Vanderbilt. Boy, that's tough. A&M, like I told you earlier, I'm not real high on Texas A&M, but Vanderbilt right now, this is at College Station. I mean, Vanderbilt, I just don't know if Vanderbilt is even going to have a team by the end of the year. I hate to sound so down on one program, but I'm not down on Derek Mason, and I'm not down on those Vanderbilt players, but I think it's to the point where the SEC presidents need to really look about just kicking Vanderbilt out of the league. Just say, look, you aren't serious about this, okay? You're not providing enough for your athletes. You're not backing up your football players. You're not giving them a good stadium to play in. You had an opportunity to build when you beat Tennessee 5 out of 7. That was a window. You did nothing with it. Look, if you're not going to bring SEC level facilities, but you're going to take the money every year, I just think I understand that everybody likes Nashville, and you can still go to Nashville even if Vanderbilt's not there. But who would you bring in for Vanderbilt? How about West Virginia? How about somebody that would really care? How about somebody that would really put a lot into being in the league? Because Vanderbilt, is just, and again, it's not Derek Mason, it's not the players, it's the administration. They're just on another planet. You know, they don't belong in the SEC, okay? They just don't. They don't deserve it. They haven't invested in the league. And I feel bad for Derek Mason. He's got some of his best players opting out. Someone asked me, who would I put in the league for? I said West Virginia. I'd put West Virginia. I liked West Virginia when they went with Missouri and A&M. I understood A&M. I mean, that was a no-brainer. Missouri, I was kind of like, really? You know, but then Missouri won the East twice, and I said, well, can't really say anything about it. Missouri's played two SEC championship games since 2012, and you know they've had a stinger. Missouri's shown up, and you know they've got a stinger. I give Missouri some credit. Their game didn't really kind of disappointed. Missouri hasn't done more to elevate basketball. Conzo Martin's there. Conzo's had some good players, but he hadn't been able to get them on the floor. Don't know how that one's going to end up. That could go either way. But Missouri's in. They're in. I want Vanderbilt out. I want West Virginia. Now, it's not going to happen. Why? Because Nashville is a huge metropolitan market. Lots of television sets. West Virginia, what hurt them the first time, still hurts them. Small market, small school, out of the way. Maybe the ACC should swallow up West Virginia, right? Somebody take in West Virginia. Am I the only one in this room that likes West Virginia? I like West Virginia. I like turning on the TV in November and you see snow in West Virginia. And who remembers Pat White? And what was Major Harris? Was that his name? I mean, I think about West Virginia. Put him in the ACC. If not the SEC, West Virginia deserves better than to be drug out there to the Big 12. They just do. They deserve better. So that's kind of my thought. All right, let's take a look and see what you all have to say. Appreciate you guys sharing this on your different pages. It always helps out. We get that traffic when you share this. More people watch it. The boss says, hey, keep doing it. People like it. Matters, helps out. So I appreciate that. Someone says, Rhett Dowser, talking about Clemson. The ACC teams aren't going to leave the ACC. And part of the problem with Florida State is Florida's already in the league. And if you didn't already notice, Florida does seem to have the SEC's ear. They on issues, they really do. So Florida's not going to want another SEC team in the state of Florida. So that's why I think Florida State's kind of out. James Crump hates West Virginia. James, I don't know. Why do you hate West Virginia? I don't know. You're going to have to tell me why you hate West Virginia. I don't understand it. Someone says they want to give me 3 points against Bama this year. I'm not going to make a bet on that game right now. Are you kidding me? There's so many different things that could happen. I'm just glad we're talking about football. If you missed the start of the show, I'm wearing my Tigers hat. I'm repping it for my friends in Michigan that don't have football. I did a show up there. You know, just like I said, it's a very dark and negative time up there. It's just amazing to me. And I don't know if you felt the energy, but I really felt the energy this week. Talking SEC football, watching the guys go to practice, seeing the videos that George is putting out, getting on the Zoom calls with the players. I mean, it's starting to feel like football. It really is. I wish I could be over at Butts-Mehre watching some practice and seeing all my friends over there. You know, so we're still kind of quarantined. It's not normal, but you know what? We're talking football. We're thinking football. We're hearing different coaches do their shows. I saw Lane Kiffin. He's trying to help Cade Mays get cleared. Worth noting, Ole Miss doesn't play Tennessee this year. I don't even know why Lane Kiffin would want to get involved in that. Actually, I do. It's because Lane Kiffin and Ole Miss is like 7 or 8 players short, and they want to get all the transfers in that they can get, right? So like Lane was petitioning that the players from the Big Ten and the Pac-12 should be able to transfer and be eligible immediately because they're not playing football. I actually think he's got a point there. I mean, because imagine if you were a college student and you're majoring in, I don't know, you want to go to vet school, right? You want to be a veterinarian. You're going to veterinarian school and you go back that fall and the college says, you know what? We're closing down our vet school. You'd be like, well, wait a minute. How can you close? I'm here to be a veterinarian. Well, you can't do it. Well, what would that student do? Well, they transfer. They go somewhere else where they could be a vet. So how can the Big Ten and the Pac-12 hold these players hostage. They want to play football. Oh, no, you can transfer, the NCAA says. We're just not going to give you an immediate waiver. Well, come on, that's not fair. That's not fair to those kids. They signed scholarship papers, and the school's got a responsibility to give them an opportunity to pursue their dreams. And Greg McGarity talked about that. You know, he talked about how these players only have a 3 to 5 year window. You don't get to go back and be 18, 19, 20, 21, 22 again. Believe me, I know. You know, wish I could. You know, we don't get those years back. What is the value of a year of your life? Ever think about that? Sometimes I think about that. You know, the richest man in the world, the richest guy on earth, and he's 70 or 80 years old. How much would that 80-year-old billionaire pay for one more healthy year on the planet? What would be the value of that? What would be the value? Ask yourself that. If someone said, you know what? I'll give you 1 year to go back to whatever age you want. What would be the value of that? To do it for 1 year, right? Millions. Millions. Millions of dollars. If you could have 1 more year in your prime. And for a lot of these guys, college is their prime. Some of them will go on to the NFL, right? But most of them won't. Those years of playing SEC football, for what, 90% of those guys, that's the highlight of their life. That's the pinnacle of what they've worked for all those years growing up, all those youth games, all those football camps, all those, you know, the ice packs and broken bones and surgeries. And you put it all into becoming a great college player. And now the Big Ten and the Pac-12, not only do they take that away from you, but the NCAA says, no, you can't transfer and play anywhere this year. That's not right. So this legislation they threw out there today about, oh, well, an extra year for everybody. Look, no, forget that. The guys that are in the Big Ten and the Pac-12 that had their programs quit on them, they deserve an opportunity to transfer and go somewhere else and play this year. Now, I'm not saying they'd break into any lineups at Georgia or Alabama, but you've got the Conference USA still playing. You got the American Athletic Conference still playing. You got the Sun Belt still playing. You don't think those guys, you don't think Justin Fields would want to go down to the University of Cincinnati and play this year for the Bearcats? I guarantee you that he would. He wants to play now. I mean, Justin will probably be a top 5 or top 10 pick, but he wants to play. Ohio State wants to play. It's amazing. The political football part of it, all I can tell you is 25 of the 26 states with Republican governors are playing high school football. It is what it is. It is what it is. It's gotten political, and different doctors are interpreting different medical evidence different ways. Are there political overtones? Well, sure there are. Of course there are. I always come back to, is the juice worth the squeeze, right? So if you're the Big Ten and the Pac-12, is there the potential for some liability issues? Is there some potential for some social backlash? Yes, there is. But is it worth it? Because what I'm feeling and what I'm seeing in the SEC is a lot of positivity. I'm seeing a lot of excited people. And yeah, we understand we understand there's a measured risk. But doggone it, these people are excited. And I think these presidents and ADs are looking at each other. And maybe at first they were just kind of going left foot, right foot, left foot, right foot. You know, just kind of like Greg Sankey was saying, running out the ground ball. But I think they're realizing now, hey, I might make it. I might beat that throw to first. There's momentum. Just the commercials that you're seeing, the energy that you're seeing, right? Talking football, talking about depth charts, talking about betting lines. I mean, this is exciting. And I think they're all looking at each other going, are we going to do this? Are we really going to? I know we had to do the anchor, but could we really, could this be Greg Sankey's moment? Could Greg Sankey become the commissioner of college football? Now, that's not Sankey's motivation. I want to be clear on that. But the way he's handled this, the NCAA is in for some changes, folks. Name, image, likeness is coming, right? Eventually, these players are going to get paid for name, image, likeness. The 1-year transfer anywhere rule, that's coming probably next year. You're going to need a leader that can hold everyone together, that can bind everyone together, that can stay in touch with all these league presidents and represent and find that middle ground and find those compromises. I think Greg Sankey's proven that he can do that. College football needs a leader. The NCAA has been a disaster. The decisions that they make about, well, they've just approved fall teams to play spring championships. Okay, yes, but that doesn't apply to the FBS ranks. Why? Because in 2013, they punted and they said that these group of 5 schools will now be the autonomy 5. Because things are so different for the Power 5, right, they get to kind of legislate a lot of their own rules. The NCAA gave up that control about 5 or 6 years ago. That's why it might be confusing. Like, well, wait a minute, the NCAA is saying this, but these conferences, well, that's because the NCAA doesn't govern the Power 5. It's too powerful. It makes too much money. You could see a complete breakaway. One thing I've seen, a trend that I've seen, and I'm going to take another step here tonight, is the ACC is having their players take classes remote, right? They're not in the classroom. And a lot of people are saying, well, if you don't have the kids on campus, you can't play football. Show me that in the rule book. Why not? Joe Burrow wasn't on campus the last 2 years. It didn't stop him playing football for LSU. So what if the players take on... Look, we're at an unprecedented time in our society. And unprecedented times call for unprecedented action, right? So let's just give up the ghost on this, got to be in class. No, that's stupid. Why would you want it? Why do you got to be in class? Go online. You didn't have to be in class in the spring. You didn't have to be in class in the summer. Now you've got to be in class? Why? According to who? All these other students don't. I mean, heck, I signed up for an online class today. I'm not going to be in class. How many of you taking online classes? I mean, you got to be in class? So football players can't? Oh, well, football players, you're not allowed to. Why not? Why discriminate against football players? If other students can take online classes, then why can't football players? Well, because they're going to play football. Whoop-de-doo. The guy in the band's going to play the tuba. Does that mean he's got to be in class to march on Saturday? No. I mean, some of these ideas that people get in their mind, it's like, look, you do what you got to do, man. If you stay on point, you stay on task. Well, we don't want it to. Look, we're not talking about 2021. We're not talking about 2022 or 2025 or 2030. We're talking about what we need to do right now as a society to give these young people the opportunities that they were promised and that they signed up for. And if you're a college and you've got the means to give these players an opportunity, then by gosh, you owe it to them. These professors, some we got some at-risk professors, so they're not going to be in the classroom. Well, good. That's smart. That's good that you protect your professors and let them teach online. How about you protect the athletes? Okay? Because, yeah, they signed up for the classes, and, yeah, they got to stay eligible, but they're at your school to play football. That's their major. Let's stop pretending, okay? Let's just stop pretending. Let's just stop doing stupid things so that we can sound idealistic. So idealistic. There's a certain element of practicality in this world right now. We need to make practical decisions. One answer does not serve all. What's good for the goose is not good for the gander. Different people are in different risk groups. Different people are in different places of the country, right? There's different risk factors, and people need to make decisions according to the risk factors and according to what serves their interest best. So when we're talking about college football, why can't we make decisions that are in the interest of the college football players? Tell me that. How can these school presidents in the Big Ten and Pac-12 have any students on campus if they're not going to allow these football players to play football? It's okay if you go to your communications and speech class. It's okay if you go to your pharmaceutical class. It's okay if you go to the chemistry lab. But it's not okay if you play football. Why not? Why not? Stupid. Stupid. Ego. You know how stupid it is? The Big Ten is now talking about playing football in January. What is going to change between now and January? Is COVID-19 going to be solved? And here's the other thing. Even if there's not football, you're still going to have COVID-19. The players are still going to be at risk. And here's what changes. Now they're back in society mixing with other people that aren't tested 3 times a week. Did you see the SEC beef that up? Now Georgia was already doing 3 times a week, but now 3 times a week is mandatory. And one of those 3 tests is going to be an independent lab. 3 times a week, these guys are going to get tested. That's not going to happen for the student in the chemistry lab. But the presidents are okay with him. But they're not okay with the guy that's social distancing and being tested 3 times a week. And around 100 other people that are tested 3 times a week. It just makes no sense. And I don't always intend on going on that rant, but it bothers me. And but Mike, people are going to die. You know what? They are. And it sucks. And they're going to die whether there's football season or not, okay? This is a horrible pandemic. This is a horrible thing that's happening. It's not good. I'm sorry. But canceling football season doesn't make it go away. It just makes people, it takes opportunities away from the players. And yes, there is some collateral damage into society. This is a part of our country's culture. This is a part of who we are. I mean, this is a part of America. There's nothing wrong with that either. There's nothing wrong with the fact that Americans like football. It's okay. It's okay to watch football and to root for teams and to feel a sense of community and a sense of attachment to your alma mater or to the school that you grew up rooting for. That's okay to do that. It's entertainment, man. It's like going to the movies. It's okay to go to the movies and see Arnold Schwarzenegger in the action movies, or Sylvester Stallone, or Tom Cruise. It's okay to do that. For a couple hours, you get lost in the movie and you enjoy it, or the drama, or the romance, or whatever, and that's okay. It's called entertainment, and we need it, okay? Because we can't just work all the time. And right now, more than ever, we need that distraction, that positive escape. For that 3 hours of that football game, man, you're right there with them, right? You're right there with them. You're thinking about that game all week. You want the breakdown, right? You're tuning in. I'm going to be telling you about all these quarterbacks. Jamie Newman, JT Daniels, Dwan. You know them like they're your own kids. You know all about them. You know Dwan's story. You guys have seen Terrence on here, the dad. You're attached to him. JT Daniels taking that leap of faith, crossing the country. Wow, you can't wait to see this guy. Jamie Newman, one of the top 5 or 6 Heisman candidates. Yeah, you're excited about that. That's cool. That's okay. I'm excited about it too. It's what I do for a living. I've given my life to this because of the passion of football. And now somebody's going to tell me there's something wrong with that? Oh, we can play in the NFL and we can play at the high school level, but we're going to take college football. That's not smart. I got a problem with that. I got a problem with that. And I don't understand it. I don't see how it saves lives. I don't see how it makes things any better. I don't think you see that it makes things any better either. Because it doesn't. It doesn't. It's political. And that's unfortunate. So we'll see what happens. Again, Big Ten talking about January football. Look, they're just trying to keep those kids from getting in the portal. I don't think they're serious. I think the Big Ten and the Pac-12 have lost so much credibility. I don't know if or when they can recover. The reality is probably 2 or 3 years, because when the NIL comes, there's going to be a lot of money for those kids and endorsement money. They go to Michigan, they go to Ohio State, they go to Oregon with their Nike connection, USC. It's going to be a complete game changer. One issue at a time, though. And right now, this is all I want the school presidents and the leaders to do. I don't think it's complicated. Make the decisions that you need to make to get you through the circumstance that you're in. Don't worry about 2021. Don't worry about setting a new precedent. Do what you have to do to protect the student athletes and give them the opportunity to pursue their ambitions. That's all. Just like you're doing for those kids in school. Just like you're doing for the school kids, right? Principals, teachers, administrators, they're doing what they can do to get the kids back in school and give those young kids a sense of normalcy, right? And the medical professionals, they're doing what they got to do. My dentist is doing what he's got to do to get me back in the office so that he can tend to my teeth. My doctor is doing what he's got to do to get me. Everybody is doing what they've got to do. So stop acting like you can't do it for college football. I mean, seriously, man. I mean, we're doing it for everything else. We're all having to deal with this. All of us. So don't act like you can't do it for college football. The Big Ten has lost a lot of credibility. I'm disappointed. I got a Big Ten degree. I'm proud I went to a Big Ten school. Good academic school, great. Long time ago, right? But to me right now, the Big Ten's an embarrassment. Their leadership is an absolute embarrassment. In the SEC, they're carrying the torch, man. Greg McGarity, Greg Sankey, the decisions that are being made at Alabama, the ACC being willing to change things up and innovate. And yes, some people go, oh, well, look at that. North Carolina State, they're not in classes. So what? So what? So what? Joe Burrow wasn't in class for 2 years at LSU. Did anybody after Joe Burrow, well, you know, LSU won the title, but Joe Burrow wasn't. No, nobody said that. Nobody cares. Who cares? Nobody cares. Let these guys do what they do, all right? Give them the same opportunity that everyone else in this country has. There's this thing about America. It's called freedom. Yeah, freedom. I know. Now listen, don't be stupid with your freedom. Don't go out there and not wear a mask. Don't go out there and drive 100 miles an hour and don't wear your seat. There's some common sense that goes along with this freedom. But apply this freedom to these young people who have opportunities. Don't discriminate against college football players. Don't discriminate against college athletes. It's not fair. School presidents, don't discriminate. It's a bad word when you discriminate, isn't it? You know what discriminate means? It means you're treating them differently than you're treating other people on your campus. In 2020, we're talking about the Big Ten and the Pac-12 discriminating. Think about that word, discriminating. We always attach it to religion or color. It's not always, it doesn't have to be about color. It doesn't have to be about religion. You're discriminating against a group of people. Why? For your own personal gain? For your own personal benefit? And how hypocritical is it that the Big Ten commissioner's son is playing football at Mississippi State? Now, how does that work? You're the Big Ten commissioner, and you're going to allow your son to make his mind up for himself about playing football at Mississippi State, but you're not going to let the college football students make their own minds up in your own conference? I don't think you can do that. I don't think you can get away with that. I think there's a problem here. And the NCAA is like, they're supposed to be the referee? Are we really going to count on the NCAA? The NCAA has flown the coop. They're gone. These people at the NCAA, they're toothless, man. They got nothing for you. So, who's in charge here? That's what we got to get back to. Moving forward, who's in charge? College football needs a commissioner. The NCAA needs reorganization and structure. This has really exposed our weaknesses in collegiate athletics. And there's a lot of good administrators out there. There's a lot of good college presidents out there. And there's a lot of good commissioners out there. I think Greg Sankey has earned probably more respect and credibility through this crisis than anybody in the country, to me. I really think so. And I think Greg Sankey could be that guy. Now, be careful what you wish for. Greg isn't an innovator, but he's a hell of a caretaker, and he's fair, and he's balanced. Now, could he innovate if he gets the chance? Maybe. Maybe it's not fair for me to say that. Maybe Greg Sankey doesn't need to innovate in the SEC because it's already the most successful conference. That's what he'll tell you. We do the schedule model this way because, well, look at the results. 15 SEC teams have played in the last 14 national championships. That's pretty remarkable. The SEC every year has, twice as many people drafted as other leagues? So, they're doing pretty good. The college coach is making a lot of money. Stadium's capacity, passion, incredible. Fans love their SEC. They love to gather. And this year will be a little different. We talked about that at the beginning of the show. But the SEC's special, man. Special. And props to the ACC. And props to Clemson's Trevor Lawrence and the statement that I think that statement that Trevor Lawrence made when the players got on board and started talking about wanting to play, I think that was a very key point in the shift in public perception because the players have been quiet. Remember, we talked about this on the show 3 weeks ago. I said, I want to hear from the players. I was really upset because we hadn't heard from them. Well, now we're hearing from the players. And the players are all saying, we want to play. And the parents are saying they want to play. And oh, by the way, the ones that don't want to play, that's okay too. You get another year of eligibility. You're not going to be penalized for that. So that freedom of choice. If you're going to give freedom to your regular students on campus, whether or not they sign up for Old State U and take the classes and go to the labs, then doggone it, you better give that freedom to your athletes or you're discriminating. Don't discriminate, people. Not you people, but the people that are making these decisions. Well, I just don't think they should do it. Don't discriminate. That's a bad word. What else we got tonight? Wrapping it up. Gone a little bit longer than I planned on going. Actually, it looks like I've gone a lot longer than I planned on going. You guys got questions for me? Anybody got any questions? What do we got here? History being written from John Adams. No doubt about it. What did your team do the year of COVID-19? I think John Williams Adams has a great point. I got another point for you. Trying to get through COVID-19 as effectively as we can, right? Part of it's survival, but part of it's trying to thrive, right? Have you all tried to exercise more? Have you tried to eat more? Have you tried to come out of the other side of this better than you went in? That's kind of been my mindset. Challenging for sure. Hope that everybody is doing. Elise Merkin says, discrimination, really? Elise, yes. If you heard the conversation, if you're not allowing a group of people to do something that you're allowing another group of people to do, then you're discriminating against them. You're discriminating against the college athletes by not allowing them to play their sports. Yeah, because they're just, the students on your campus are just as susceptible to COVID-19 as the college football athletes, because the college football athletes has more stringent testing. So yeah, that's what that means. Absolutely. Look at this. Matt lost 5 pounds. Just ran. That's what I'm talking about. I've lost about 5 pounds too. That's a good number. Remember Kirby had gotten in that weight loss contest with Will Muschamp, and he was trying to lose all that weight as well. Yeah, it's tough to lose weight. It's not a lot of fun. What else we got here? Askew says, stick to recruiting. I don't really talk a whole lot about recruiting. Jeff Santel does a show on Wednesday nights, does a great show on Wednesday nights about recruiting. Hopefully you catch that show that Jeff does called Before the Hedges. So we have Brandon Adams does a 10 a.m. show daily. Connor Riley, I do a Monday night show called On the Beat at 7:30. Connor Riley does a Tuesday night show at 7. Jeff's got a show Wednesday. We do something called Cover 4, where the 4 of us get on a panel and discuss all these issues. That's on Thursday night. And then Friday night, it's this show right here. And, just try to talk about a lot of different issues and just kind of keep it real. Try to do a rundown of all the news that happened during the week. Obviously, this was a very busy week. A lot going on in college football right now, in college sports. A lot of momentum going on. Someone says it's about the money. I understand that the testing is expensive, but once again, I go back to the contract. When that student athlete signs a contract with you, that scholarship paper, and you promise him that opportunity to pursue his ambitions, I think you got to do what you can do to make his ambitions, to give him that opportunity. I mean, that's kind of like a contract, right? Because what if it was the other way around? The player signs a scholarship, and then the player says, "You know what? I don't want to play." What happens? You say, "Oh no, you can't do that. You signed a scholarship paper. You're going to have to play, or you're not going to be on this team." So does that only work one way? Does the contract only work one way? The scholarship paper only work one way? I got a problem with that. I think most of you have a problem with that. Marshall Fleming talking about this Georgia team and how deep the defense is. I agree, and I asked Dan Lanning today. I said, "How can you guys possibly get any better?" And it's kind of funny that I would use that phrase. It's kind of an old joke running around. But I said, "How can you guys get any better?" I just don't know how this Georgia defense can get better. And he said, "Look, we're not the '85 Bears." I thought that was a great analogy because I still think that's the greatest defense that I've ever seen play football at any level. He said, what happened in 2019 is over. It's all about 2020. And they want to finish like we saw those quarterback pressures last year. they want to finish those plays. They want to get the sacks. They want to get more turnovers. Georgia defense was very good last year, but they want to finish. And I do think that they can be better. Let's see, what else do we got here? James Crump says, don't start it off with Big Ten talk. Did I talk about Alabama? Gosh, I don't remember talking about Alabama, did I? I don't think I did, James. I think I talked about the attendance models, didn't I? Mike said they won't have Big Ten football. That's right. Are people asking about the Detroit hat? Yeah, the Detroit hat is all about the Tigers and honoring my friends in Michigan that don't have football. I've talked to them this week, and they're so bummed out. It's just, I can't even tell you how dark it is up there. Just what the mood is just, whereas down here, look, it's not perfect, but people are still buzzing, man. We're talking football down here, and we're looking forward to it. Adam Doby says he lives in Kentucky. Great that you look forward to it, Adam. I know the Kentucky fans are excited. I kind of think Kentucky peaked with 10 wins. I say that and the Kentucky fans get all angry at me. I still think Kentucky's a basketball school. I do. But I like Kroger Field. I don't know how many of the Georgia fans watching were at Kroger Field when Georgia went up there in 2018 in the de facto SEC East game. It was a great environment. The Kentucky fans were doing it right. They were friendly. Georgia was not friendly on the field, though. Georgia really took it to them that day. That was a great win for Georgia football. I think about that when, Georgia fans, and this is typical of any program that's on the cusp of greatness, fans tend to focus on, well, you didn't beat Alabama, or you didn't get by LSU. And it's almost as if you don't appreciate those wins as much. And I look at the win over Kentucky 2 years ago. That was a great win. I look at the win over Notre Dame. I'm not going to say it was a great win, but it was a great environment. It was survivable. That was one the Georgia fans won that game for Georgia. There's not a doubt in my mind. Without those fans, Georgia does not beat Notre Dame. I mean, I'm sorry. It just doesn't happen. I just think that, what was it, 6 motion penalties, if I'm not mistaken? I think so. I want to say there were 6 motion penalties in that game. That doesn't happen. They would not have won that game if not for all those fans and the noise they created. And Notre Dame had actually, it was interesting because Notre Dame had worked really hard that week on that specific thing, on the noise. And I thought that was pretty interesting that after all the noise work Notre Dame put in, they still had 6 motion penalties against Georgia. And that was kind of a coming out party for a couple of those Georgia transfers. DJ Daniel was there to knock down the final pass. Jermaine Johnson was there on the pass rush with Nolan Smith on Ian Book. I mean, I can still remember that play. And I remembered it because that particular week I had gone on television and talked about how there was no circumstance that Notre Dame could win that game. I said there's not. It just cannot happen. And here we are with a minute and a half left, and I'm thinking to myself, if Notre Dame wins this game, I am never, ever, ever going to hear the end of this. Because Notre Dame fans, they were ready to pounce. And everybody likes making predictions, right? But when you make a prediction and you're wrong, oh man, people don't forget. And that's part of the deal. If you're going to give predictions and you're going to throw things out there, not everybody's going to agree. It's important, I think, in my job to try and research things as much as you possibly can and be as educated as you can on it so that when you present an opinion, you do so with the knowledge of why some people may disagree. And like I said, why one size doesn't fit all. And I'm sensitive to people that disagree. Maybe they have a cause. Like I said, there's different risk groups. Or football is just not as important to them. Part of the reason why people are going to great lengths is because what we talked about, the social phenomena, how important football is to a community. Well, some people don't understand and they're not a part of that. And so if it's really hard for them to understand it, right? It's kind of like trying, someone in Alaska trying to explain to somebody in Florida, how cool it is to ice fish, right? A person in Florida is like, wait a minute, I kind of like going out on a boat, and putting on my, people, no, the ice fishing is much better. It's kind of hard to understand how cool ice fishing could be, right? I didn't really understand snowmobiling until I went on a snowmobile. And I don't know that I'll ever go on one again because I'm kind of scared of those things and motorcycles and things like that. But I didn't really have a perspective, right? So that's really what we're talking about is perspective. And I feel qualified to have an opinion on this because I have parents that are in a high-risk group that are over 70. You know, I've got a daughter who's type 1 diabetes. She's in a high-risk group. I've got a granddaughter that's 3 years old that's getting ready to go back to school. I've got another daughter that's a manager at a grocery store and working her way through college, and she's on the front lines, right? And then I've got a son who's 23, you know, and he worries about this. So I kind of feel like I've got all these touch points, and I see why different decisions make sense for different people. But I also have worked covering college football for, gosh, I guess 27 years now. And I've talked to enough of these college football athletes to understand how their mind works. And they just want an opportunity. That's really the word we're looking at here is opportunity and freedom, right? The freedom to make your own decision and an opportunity to pursue your goals. And to me, that's the responsibility of these college presidents. So that's what I got tonight. I appreciate everybody that joined me. You know, Friday Night Mike has been it's been a great hit. I hope we can keep doing it. Like I said, you hit those share buttons, help this show get seen. Want to keep doing it into the season. Monday night, looking forward to the Monday night show. Still trying to put together a guest. It's getting a little tougher now that we're closer to the season to get the guests. Last week I had Connor. The week before I had Jeff. Harder to get those coaches on the shows. Everybody's getting kind of busy. ESPN programming is kicked off. I think that's great. I think those guys at ESPN, I've gotten to know a lot of them. They're really cool guys. You wonder what they're like offset. They're good people. They've worked really hard to get to where they're at. And I think the SEC network does a tremendous job. So, you know, I congratulate those guys that they're getting back in the studio finally. And they're able to bring the show to you. And they do a great job. And, you know, they do provide a lot of good video and a lot of a nice feature material. You know, I might get a little bit more real. I probably get a little too worked up. Again, I hope I didn't hurt anybody's feelings. I hope everyone understands that I'm a big believer that you're entitled to your opinion. It's my job to share mine and provide as much clarity and insight to the issue that we've all been dealing with. And it was fun to talk football, talk about football players. Man, there's stuff on the website. Kieras Jackson interview, Jamari Salyer interview. Real football stuff is being written about. There's football videos. You want to read about the quarterbacks. We're writing about all the quarterbacks. It's a great time for college football. Now that it's started up again, there's momentum, there's energy, and you can feel it. And I hope that you could feel it tonight. I hope everybody is safe this weekend. Everybody stay safe. Have a great weekend. And, man, thanks for joining me tonight, and I'll talk to you guys next week. Have a good one.